Article 1, Clause 1 says what? India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. And when Dr. Ambedkar was explaining this, he said that although the country will be federation, but we are using the word union. And then he explained everything. Whatever he explained could be summarized in two statements. One, Indian federation is not the result of an agreement between the units. And second, the units have no right to secede or break away from the union. Nature of Indian federalism. Now look here, before you write anything, look here very carefully. Is India federal? But does it also possess some unitary features? Remember, federalism with unitary bias is one of the outstanding features of Indian Constitution. Remember that? Now drop your pen and look here very carefully. Article 1, Clause 1 of the Indian Constitution. It means the very first article of the Indian Constitution says this. It says, India, that is Bharat, shall be, and you understand the meaning of the word shall now, shall be a union of states. Do you understand that? So what does this article tell us? It tells us two things. First, it tells us the name of our country. And what is it? India, that is Bharat. So the official name is India or Bharat. Though there are other popular names as well, like Hindustan or Bharatvarsh. Do you understand that? But the official documents will write what? India or Bharat. Do you understand that? So it says India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Now, Dr. Ambedkar, when he was presenting the draft constitution in the Constituent Assembly, he said that although India is a federation, the Constituent Assembly has used the term union instead of the term federation. And then he made a long speech to make everybody understand that why the Constituent Assembly, or the drafting committee to be more precise, has used the word union instead of federation, although India is a federation. So whatever he said in the Constituent Assembly that day, if I have to just summarize it and bring two output from his speech, these will be the two outputs. First, he says that the Indian Federation is not the result of an agreement. It is not the result of an agreement between the units. It means the states. Do you get that? That's the first thing that he says. And second, he says that the units have, units means the states, have no right to secede from the union. It means no right to break away from the federation. So anybody who says that this part of India should get separated from India or something like that, then that person is anti-constitutional as per Dr. Ambedkar. Do you get that? So Dr. Ambedkar said this, that although India is a federation, but the Constituent Assembly is using the word union instead of the word federation. Then he made a long speech that why the Constituent Assembly or the drafting committee is using the word union instead of federation, and whatever he said could be summarized in two sentences. First, the Indian Federation is not the result of an agreement like the American Federation. And second, that the units in Indian Federation have no right to secede from the federation. But you see, the word union is very confusing because the word union does not indicate a federation of the Indian type. Do you get it? Because the word union has been used by several constitutions. Like the word union is found in the constitution of USA as well. And USA is the model of federation. You know, even the residuary powers are vested in the states, whereas in India the residuary powers are vested in the center. So USA also uses the word union. To further add to the confusion, the British North America Act. The British North America Act is that act which created the Canadian Constitution, which according to Lord Haldane is not a federation at all. Even the Canadian Constitution uses the word union. If you look at the Constitution of South Africa, which is the Union of South Africa Act 1909, it also uses the word union, but it outrightly creates a unitary government and not a federation, but still using the word union. Also, USA is using the word union. And even in the erstwhile constitution of USSR, the Soviet Russia, they also used the word union, where they gave even the right to the states to secede from the union. Do you understand that? So the word union is very confusing. So we must really look into the provisions of the Constitution to find out that whether what Dr. Ambedkar said that day in the Constituent Assembly is actually true or not. That India is really a federation or not. And this investigation becomes more crucial because of the attack on Indian Constitution by the Western constitutional experts like Professor Weary, who says that the Indian Constitution is not federal, rather it is quasi-federal. Do you get that? Article 1, Clause 1 says what? India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. And when Dr. Ambedkar was explaining this, he said that although the country will be federation, but we are using the word union. And then he explained everything. Whatever he explained could be summarized in two statements. One, Indian federation is not the result of an agreement between the units. And second, the units have no right to secede or break away from the union. But the word union itself, we have seen, it has been used in all types of constitution. That's why it becomes very interesting for us, as well as it becomes very imperative on us to go through the provisions of the Constitution and to ascertain for ourselves that whether what Dr. Ambedkar was saying in that day in the Constituent Assembly is correct or not. Do you get it? So we have to see that whether what he said on that day was correct or not. Now look here, drop it there and look here. There is a problem when it comes to any discussion on federation. There's a very big problem. And what is that problem you see? First, there is no universal definition on federation upon which everybody will agree. Different political scientists, scholars, constitutional experts, lawyers, they define federation in their own way. So there is no standard definition on federation upon which there is a general or universal agreement. So first problem is this, that there is no universal definition of what? Of federation. And second problem is this, and this is more of a problem I feel, that it is habitual. It is habitual. Habitual means सबको ये आदत लगी हुई है. It is habitual among scholars, political scientists, constitutional experts, lawyers, etc. to compare any discussion or to start any discussion of federation with the Constitution of USA. And they consider it as the ideal of federation or the ideal federation. Do you understand that? So what happens is all discussions on federation starts with the Constitution of USA. And there is a very simple formula that scholars have evolved. And what is that formula you see? That they will keep the US Constitution on one side and whatever constitution of another country, suppose X, on the other side. And they will match it with the US Constitution. If they find any inconsistency, they will declare that it is not a federation. So if the Constitution is not an exact replica of the US type, it is not a federation. Do you understand that? This is the second problem with all the discussions that take place in and around federation. What is the first problem? No standard definition. Second, to compare with the US Constitution. And the moment it is not showing any conformity with the US Constitution, declare it as a non-federal setup. Well, if such strict test of federalism is applied to all over the world across all constitutions, perhaps the Constitution of Switzerland and Australia will only pass that test. And no other constitution will qualify as a federal constitution. But what will be gained by putting so many constitutions outside the class of federation? Is there anything substantial that will gain? Well, look here, that there is a binary understanding here. Can you understand this? What is the binary understanding? 1 or 0. So if it is not the US type, then it is 0. That means it is not a federation, it's a binary understanding. What about if it is 0.5, 0.6, 0.3, etc.? There is no discussion on this. What I mean is, think about this, that there can be a constitution which takes some federal features, which takes some unitary features. Do you get it? Then how do you put this constitution? Can you say 0.5 is equals to 1? Can you say 0.5 is equals to 0? 0.5 is 0.5. Do you understand that? So what about those constitution which take some federal features and some unitary features? Then the idea should be to see that whether it is consisting more federal features or more unitary features. It means it is essentially more federal or more unitary. Whether it is more federal with subsidiary unitary features or more unitary with subsidiary federal features. Dr. Ambedkar is saying what? Indian state is essentially a federal state with subsidiary unitary features. Do you understand that? Even the Supreme Court of India has said so, that it is essentially federal with subsidiary unitary features. लेकिन वेस्ट में वो क्या बोलते हैं कि इंडिया is essentially unitary with subsidiary federal features, and they point out at few things like single constitution, single citizenship, appointed governor, all India services, constitutional emergency, all those kind of things. And they say is that actually India is essentially what? A unitary state with subsidiary federal features, and this is what they call as quasi-federal. Quasi-federal मतलब सिर्फ नाम के federal, but हो क्या असल में? Unitary. Do you understand that? The same charge is not only levied over the Indian Constitution but also the Canadian Constitution. They are also called as quasi-federal. Do you understand that? But this kind of thinking, it stems from this binary logic. Can you understand this? To understand this, think of this. I am making a rule, and the rule is if X is not a cat, it is a dog. Suppose this is the rule. If X is not a cat, it is a dog. Now think of this. X equals to lion. Suppose X is a variable. So X is not a cat, satisfied? Then X is a dog. Is it true? Because it stems from the binary understanding. If something is not this, then it will be that. And mostly societies are also divided like this. You understand that? That you will be considered, if you are not this, then you are this. If you are not a theist, you are an atheist. If you are not an atheist, then you are a theist. It could be anything. If you are not a socialist, you are a capitalist. If you are not a capitalist, you are a socialist. Most of the times, these binary understandings prevail in the society. Do you get that? What about that person who believes in both, say, some principles of socialism and some principles of capitalism? What about that person? Do you understand that? So the question of federalism is actually a question of degree. It means to what degree it is federal. Like say for example, 0.9 is closest to 1. Similarly, 0.1 is closest to 0. Do you get it? So how many federal features or how many unitary features? That should be the question. Dr. Ambedkar is saying more federal features and less unitary features. That's why we are essentially federal with subsidiary unitary features. But Western scholars, they say we are essentially unitary with subsidiary federal features. और सबसे बड़े critic जो हैं वो है Kenneth Clinton Weary, Professor Weary, Australian constitutional expert who also taught at the Oxford University. It's a very famous name in the annals of constitutional circles. कोई constitution का discussion नहीं होता इनके बिना, इतने बड़े scholar हैं. वो कह रहे हैं इंडिया is quasi federal. तो हमको देखना पड़ेगा कि कौन सा है, because we have to always think rationally. It's not necessary that you have to always think from the Indian standpoint. You have to think rationally as well. Do you get it? Because you see, friends, federalism is more of a functional concept than an institutional concept. and institutions can differ from one society to other society. What do you mean by this? Think of this. Say marriage. Is it an institution? It is an institution, social institution. Now, you tell me how marriage is here in India. Is it same like in Middle Eastern countries or in European countries? But still, the institution remains there. So it is more of a functional concept, how it functions here, rather than the name. When I say marriage, doesn't mean in some countries there is polygamy, in some countries there is monogamy. So marriage as a function, somewhere we have patriarchal setups, somewhere we have matrilineal setups, right? So you see, maternal setups or paternal setups, they may change from society to society. So whether it is marriage or any other institution, like government, if I say government is an institution, are all governments same? Some are dictatorships, some are authoritarian governments, some are democratic regimes. You never know. So federalism is also like that. It is more of a functional concept rather than an institutional concept, because institutions can differ from one state or one society to other. Do you get it? That is what we need to keep in mind. But कहाँ से ये सारा problem शुरू होता है? ये शुरू होता है because there is no universal definition of federation, and it is common and habitual among political scientists that starting point will be the US Constitution. Let's compare with the US Constitution. If it is showing any inconsistency, dump it from the class of federation. अगर ये टेस्ट लगाओगे, सिर्फ दो ही कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन और है जो पास करेंगे इस टेस्ट को, स्विस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एंड द ऑस्ट्रेलियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. कनाडा भी निकल जाएगा, इंडिया भी निकल जाएगा, बहुत सारे लोग निकल जाएंगे, राइट?